Welcome to Her and Boss, the podcast designed to help you find your inner entrepreneur. Her and Boss is brought to you by recent graduates, Anissa, Lucy, Megan, Ben, Sarah, and me, Nikki, as we enter our careers and speak to the inspiring women who can help us along the way. Hi everyone, this is your host Nikki, and I'm joined today by the amazing Sonya Barlow, award-winning founder of LMF Network, TedX speaker, and diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. Sonya and I are covering imposter syndrome in today's Minisode, what it is, what it feels like, and how you can take some steps to overcoming it. This Minisode is sponsored by Rise, created by Barclays. Rise is a global community of the world's top innovators working together to create the future of financial services. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Sonya.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. We're really excited to have you here. What we wanted to kind of chat to you about today is imposter syndrome. This is such a hot topic, and it's come up in a lot of our episodes with women who are, working through their careers or trying to start a business. I think it's something that a lot of women do feel. So just to kick off, I was wondering if you could help us define what imposter syndrome is and how common it is.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So imposter syndrome is fundamentally the feeling of believing that you are a fraud or that you don't deserve an opportunity or that you're just not meant to be where you are. And actually 62% of the adult population feel like an imposter. Those numbers go as high as 80% when you are thinking about the millennial and Gen Z generation. And imposter syndrome is definitely a phenomenon it's something that women feel more than men, or those who identify as women or non-binary.
Yeah, I mean, that is shocking. That's such a high number, especially for kind of younger generations. I can't quite believe it. I guess in a way it's somewhat comforting to know that other people are experiencing it as well. And actually be interesting to kind of hear if you ever feel imposter syndrome and what it feels like for you. I think for me, what I started to notice when I'm feeling imposter syndrome, because I'll start to really kind of hedge what I'm saying or kind of downplay whatever my opinions are when really, I am a subject matter expert on some things, and I don't need to feel like I should, present things as, oh, like just wanted to add this, or do you think, or I think that this is the case, when I kind of need to be more firm. And that's how I've learned to kind of identify when I'm feeling imposter syndrome. Do you have, are you able to share what it feels like for you?
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful that you're able to by now identify, because actually most people aren't even able to identify that they're feeling like an imposter. And if they are, really being able to term or coin that phrase. I genuinely feel that I have had episodes where I feel like an imposter. So most definitely at work. Some of the times being as simple as going through 4 or 5 interview rounds to get a job and then showing up on your first day and being like, wow, I'm not smart enough to be here. Whereas in reality, you've done what you needed to do to be there. And day one, you're not meant to know everything, right? So it's also, my point being, you also feel like an imposter because society has made you believe that on day one of your first job, you should know everything and you should just be a sponge and absorb everything that happens in the workplace, even though that takes 3 to 6 months. So that's a common kind of episode that I've felt, and I know other people have felt too. But it can be as simple as showing up to an event and feeling just out of place. I don't come from wealth, and so there have been times where I've walked into something a little bit more higher class, or been in a situation where people come from a different race or ethnicity, or just being in tech. Actually, there's times where you feel like an imposter because you're normally the only woman or the woman of color in the room, so you do think, hey, am I meant to be here? But at the same time, I have to really admit that for the last few months especially, I don't feel like an imposter. I don't even remember the last time I felt like an imposter, and that's not anything to do with boasting or bragging. If anything, we should be comfortable also in not feeling like an imposter, because every situation I now have, or I've built up, or I've created, I have created, and I deserve to be there because I am either the expert or the leader or the most knowledgeable person in the room who is then delivering the content or the experience. And that fundamentally is my job right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so good. And you're right. It's not, saying that you don't feel like an imposter isn't you being arrogant or bragging. It's just that confidence in yourself. So I love that. I think that's so cool. I'd be interested to hear from you as well why you think imposter syndrome is more common in younger generations than in older generations.
Yeah, do you know, thank you so much for asking. I love talking about this, and I think you'd hear terms like snowflakes or the weaker generation, the softer generation. I don't believe any
Mm,
of that. What I think it is, and what I believe it is from my perception, is the fact that we are living in a time and space and age where everything is online and digital, and so you are instantly gratified, or you are instantly compared, or you are instantly cursed. Right? There is
hmm
no time span. And so if you do something, you can put it online, and a like, a click, a comment, and a follower, for example, will prove that something was working. And if you didn't necessarily receive those levels of engagement, then you're thinking, right, what do I need to go back and do and fix? And so younger generations who are going into the workplace, they want instant feedback, because if you aren't telling me something I've done wrong in that moment, don't come and tell me in 9 months' time. That's not going to
hmm
work. It's not going to work for me. It's not going to make anything better. And secondly, it's the fact that everything is a pretend and perfect aesthetic, meaning my feed on Instagram is curated, as is most people's. So you're seeing one snapshot and a picture of possibly what isn't even my actual day going up on the feed, which is then presenting the life that I'm living, whereas you don't really see the other 23 hours and 59 minutes,
hmm
right? And so, though I tend to open my Instagram and talk a lot about mental health and anxiety, and open up about the failures as much as I do about the successes, the fact is that when you go on an Instagram feed or a Twitter feed or a LinkedIn feed, you're seeing everyone basically hype themselves or hype someone else or
Yeah.
champion something they've done well, and so you can't help but feel like, hey, I'm not doing what they're doing. Am I not good enough? Hey, I'm not doing what they have done if I haven't achieved enough. Oh, look at this girl who's 28 who's done this.
hmm
Whereas I'm doing something completely different. That means that I haven't been successful. And so, to really summarize, it's our own measurables of success that we can't define as individuals. And then we tend to compare ourselves with other people. Though, something I say very often is, we are definitely not in a sprint, it's a marathon. But most importantly, everyone's journey is so different that we need to be confident in our own path, and have well-defined goals, or at least milestones that we want to achieve, that we're kind of setting ourselves up for, and not necessarily comparing ourselves to those who are around us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you're right. I hate when people say that, our generation or even the kind of generation slightly younger than us or slightly older than us, we're all snowflakes and we, are trying to be unique. I do genuinely think that if, at any point in time, if people were able to compare themselves to others as easily as we can, I do think that you'd kind of have a similar effect. So yeah, I think that that was really, really insightful. And I guess that leads nicely on to what would be your top tips for overcoming imposter syndrome or starting to address your own imposter syndrome.
Yeah, such a great question. So I have something I call the three S's, which is a rule, let's say, or a guide that I made up a couple of years ago, and it's also part of the book that I'm writing. And the three S's basically means, the first S stands for skills or strengths. So go and write down all your skills and strengths that you think exist. The second is your success story. So fundamentally, a success story for each skill or strength, or a time that you've tried. And the last S is your so what. So what's the impact, the result that's been driven? And what that helps you to do is curate a list of where you have succeeded, what differences you have made, where your skills are really amplified and your strengths are strong. But at the same time, it helps you to remind yourself as to what you are good at and what you are known for and what you are leading. The other thing I would say is, be really clear on your values and your kind of personal morals and principles you live by. And the way that you can find that out is just consider when you're happy or when you're fulfilled. A really simple example being, when I was younger, I loved to talk, right? I love to talk now too. But the society that we lived in, it was, hey, you as a woman, you as a young girl, you as a young brown girl can't talk a lot, or you should be seen, not heard. And so what
Mm,
I hadn't necessarily understood or realized was that this was my strength. And so if I really toned into my strength from a young age, I probably could have really been able to amplify my voice in a different way, in a more constructive way at a younger age, because I knew my strength. Whereas I'd walk into the world of tech and I was often told, hey, well, you're not going to make it because you're not technical. Whereas in technology, the skills aren't just technology skills. You need communication, you need leadership, you need empathy. And so, kind of really, to summarize the point, it's one, being very clear on your own strengths, two, being clear on your own values and principles that you're living by, and thirdly, aligning those skills and strengths and values to your opportunities and your path rather than doing something for the sake of it, or being in positions where others think you're not good enough because you don't necessarily fit that criteria.
I love that. I think those are really, really, really good tips and really easy to follow as well. And this kind of idea of having your guiding values or principles, keeps coming up. And I think it's so important and something I wish that we were taught at a younger age. But, whenever you kind of figure that out, I do think it really kind of unlocks the key to success in a way. You kind of brought up some of your strengths there with being kind of outgoing and talkative. Could you give any other examples of how you've recognized your skills and strengths, identified a success story, and then what that means?
Yeah, completely. It's an interesting one, but people often say or put terms on entrepreneurs like you're an innovator. I don't think I'm an innovator. What I think is I'm a disruptor. And by that, I mean, I think I find bugs in things, which I now think is a strength and I think is a skill.
Yeah.
So, small instances. In every job I've had, I've often found that something doesn't work, or I found a problem in the approach or the process, or I've genuinely broken something and found a bug in the system. And so I disrupt in that nature. So something that already exists is about finding something that doesn't necessarily match the 100% or the whole or the gray area. The success around that is then being able to fix it or to amplify it or to change it. And the story, the impact, well, if I just use my own network, the LMF network was created because I was lonely and because I was sad and because I didn't have a community around me that existed to discuss promotion and careers and progression. But most importantly, I didn't have the funds or finances to pay for the networking opportunities that already existed. And so that doesn't mean that I innovate. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean I create something which didn't necessarily exist. It meant that I went and disrupted a model that already existed and I innovated on top of that. And the success or the impact I've had is, 2 years on, we have over 30,000 in following. I've upskilled through my team over 5,000 people. We've rolled out a mentoring program for 6 months that has 150 matched across 18 countries. Those are real tangible results and successes. If it wasn't for where I've disrupted and most importantly where I failed, ironically, I wouldn't have done a TED talk that is literally called Failure Comes Before Resilience, because I have messed up so many times and that's now a skill and strength of mine. But when you're younger, it's if you fail, you've got it wrong. Well, actually, no, it's if you failed, you were brave enough to try and it just didn't go the way that you originally planned. And that's all it is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, first of all, I think those examples that you've given there of you starting LMF Network based on a problem that you had yourself, but then also your other strength of being outgoing and being talkative, it kind of shows that your skills and your strengths you're probably taking for granted at the moment. So it's about thinking about what comes naturally to you, what you're doing naturally, and identifying that as a strength rather than just kind of a part of who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, ultimately, fundamentally, if we go back to the question you asked, I think imposter syndrome is a misalignment of your skills and strengths.
Yeah, I love that. Such a kind of interesting and unique way to look at it. It kind of shows that it's not about imposter syndrome. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with the circumstance that you're in. And so again, using those 3 S's that you identified, finding your skills and strengths, what's the success story behind those? And then what does that mean? I think that is, really, really important. And I hope something that all of our listeners kind of take away from listening to this. Thank you so much. This has been really helpful.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for listening. Make sure to check out our Instagram and LinkedIn pages at Her Own Boss Podcast and let us know what you'll be doing to overcome imposter syndrome.